Most people do not lose the right people. They were never meant to walk with them in the first place. That is the truth most are too afraid to confront. What you interpret as abandonment, rejection, or incompatibility is often something colder and more precise, selection finishing its work. You did not ask for too much. You did not become too intense. You did not ruin something good. What happened is that someone reached the edge of your depth and discovered they were not built to remain there. Machiavelli understood this long before modern psychology tried to soften human nature. He saw men rise and fall not because of chance, but because of alignment under pressure. Everyone claims loyalty when life is calm. Everyone speaks of love when circumstances are easy. But very few can remain standing when the terrain becomes hostile. And this is the illusion that must be destroyed first. Not everyone is meant to survive proximity to your life. You have been conditioned to believe that connection is fragile, that it must be protected, explained, reassured, and constantly maintained. Machiavelli would have considered this weakness disguised as virtue. Real alliances are not fragile. They are stress-tested. If someone collapses the moment you stop performing, stop chasing, stop explaining, or stop dimming yourself, they were never meant to be there. They were not companions. They were visitors benefiting from access. Here is the brutal law Machiavelli understood while studying power. Only those built for weight can remain close to it. Most are not. They want the benefits of your clarity without the discipline that produces it. They want your ambition without the isolation it demands. They want your direction without your standards. The moment pressure appears, they fail instinctively because survival was never their intention. The first test arrives quietly. It does not announce itself. It appears the moment you stop explaining yourself. When you move without justification, when you choose without permission, when you no longer narrate every decision to keep others comfortable. Those not meant for you will grow uneasy. They will ask questions disguised as concern. They will frame your independence as distance, your silence as arrogance, your boundaries as cruelty. Explanation is how the weak maintain access to the strong, and when that access disappears, fear follows. The one meant for you does not panic when you go quiet. They understand that silence is not absence, it is focus. They do not demand updates or reassurance. They do not interpret your inward turn as rejection. They wait with confidence because they trust direction. Machiavelli warned that dependence breeds resentment, and resentment breeds betrayal. When someone requires constant reassurance to remain close to you, they are already rehearsing future disloyalty. The second test appears when you stop rewarding convenience, when you reclaim your energy, when you stop over-giving, over-explaining, and over-accommodating. The wrong people experience this as abandonment. The right ones experience it as relief. They never wanted to be carried. They wanted to walk beside you. Machiavelli observed that men who surround themselves with dependence eventually collapse under their own generosity, not because generosity is evil, but because it attracts those who cannot stand on their own. Watch carefully how people respond when you pull back. Do they accuse you of changing? Do they remind you of who you used to be? Do they frame your growth as betrayal? That reaction is the test revealing itself. The ones meant for you do not complain. They adapt. They find new ways to contribute. They ask how to move with you instead of why you are moving at all. The third test is pressure, and it is the most honest of all. Pressure does not create character. It reveals it. Observe people when things go wrong, not catastrophically, but subtly. A delay, a loss, a quiet setback. Do they grow restless? Do they look for blame? Do they seek exits? Or do they become calmer? The person meant for you stabilizes when pressure enters the room. They do not require chaos to feel alive. They do not amplify disorder. They become operational. Machiavelli admired men who remained lucid under uncertainty. He despised those who panicked and spread fear through reaction. If someone increases chaos around you, they are not a partner. They are a liability. Survival requires composure. And this is where many misunderstand strength. The one meant for you does not submit to you, nor do they compete with you. They stand beside you. They challenge without undermining. They disagree without destabilizing. They correct you in private and defend you in public. This balance is rare and it is never accidental. Machiavelli warned that flattery destroys leaders faster than enemies. The one meant for you is not impressed by your image. They are invested in your trajectory. They are not intoxicated by who you are today. They are committed to who you are becoming. Their presence can feel uncomfortable because they sharpen your standards rather than soothe your ego. Most people cannot survive that friction. They want affirmation, not alignment, comfort, not consequence. So they leave, and you mistake their departure for loss. It was not loss, it was selection completing itself. And this is only the beginning, because the next tests are far harsher and far more revealing. They expose false loyalty, hidden envy, and the quiet resentment that poisons most relationships long before they end. In the next part, we move into the tests that determine who is biologically incapable of walking with you through power. Most people will not survive what comes next, and that is exactly the point. The fourth test arrives not when you fail, but when you begin to win. This is where the illusion of goodwill finally collapses. Progress exposes people more brutally than adversity ever could. When your discipline starts producing visible results, when your confidence no longer needs permission, when your direction becomes unmistakable, the environment around you subtly shifts. Machiavelli observed that men tolerate equality, but superiority, even quiet superiority, unsettles them. Not because they hate you, but because your movement forces them to confront their own stagnation. The test is not whether people congratulate you. Words are cheap. The test is whether their internal temperature changes when you rise. Watch what happens when you announce a win. Some will immediately minimize it, reframing your achievement as luck, timing, or circumstance. Others will pivot the conversation away from you, instinctively reclaiming relevance. Some will issue warnings disguised as concern, cautioning you about risks that conveniently dampen your momentum. These reactions are not conscious sabotage, they are self-protection. Your assent destabilizes their self-concept. The one meant for you does not shrink when you grow. They do not feel robbed by your progress. Their nervous system remains calm because their identity is not dependent on your position. When you rise, they rise internally. This absence of envy is not morality, it is structural compatibility. The fifth test is silence, but not the comfortable kind. It is the silence that appears when you stop chasing closeness, when you no longer initiate every conversation, when you stop carrying the emotional load, when you allow space without rushing to fill it. This test is merciless because it reveals asymmetry instantly. Many relationships survive only through your effort, your presence, your reassurance. When that energy is removed, the bond collapses. Machiavelli warned against alliances sustained by one-sided generosity because they rot into dependence and contempt. The one meant for you does not disappear when you stop chasing. They notice absence. They move toward equilibrium. Reciprocity emerges without negotiation because extraction was never the goal. This is where many men feel a sharp pang of loneliness and mistake it for loss. In reality, they are witnessing the collapse of artificial bonds. The silence is not emptiness, it is clarity. When effort stops and nothing replaces it, the relationship was never mutual. The one meant for you does not require pursuit to remain present. They do not interpret space as rejection. They understand rhythm. They understand that closeness sustained by pressure is not closeness at all. The sixth test is emotional containment. Every human eventually reveals volatility, stress, anger, fatigue, doubt. These are inevitabilities, not flaws. What matters is how another person responds when your composure slips. The wrong ones escalate. They dramatize. They make your internal moment about themselves. They require you to regulate their emotions while you are still managing your own. This is unsustainable. Machiavelli believed disorder spreads faster than discipline. The one meant for you becomes steadier when you destabilize. Not cold, not distant, grounded. They do not shame you, nor do they rush to fix you to soothe themselves. They hold the frame. Strength recognizes strength even when it wavers. This ability to contain emotion without absorption is rare. Most people confuse empathy with enmeshment. They drown in your mood and then blame you for the water. The one meant for you understands that emotional storms pass. They do not panic. They do not weaponize vulnerability later. They do not keep mental ledgers of your worst moments. They know the difference between weakness and transition. This is not softness, it is composure. The seventh test is loyalty under ambiguity. Loyalty during clarity is meaningless. Everyone is loyal when outcomes are obvious and incentives are aligned. True loyalty reveals itself only when circumstances are uncertain, when taking your side carries social cost, when standing with you risks discomfort or loss. Machiavelli distrusted declarations because he understood that behavior under pressure reveals more than words ever could. Observe how people speak about you when you are not present, by how they speak about others when you are. Those who casually betray confidences are rehearsing for your future. The one meant for you guards your name instinctively, not loudly, not theatrically, quietly. They understand that an attack on you is an attack on the unit. They correct you privately and defend you publicly. If someone agrees with critics in public to maintain social harmony, they are hedging their bets. They are preparing for your fall. Machiavelli saw this pattern repeatedly among courtiers. Those who play both sides never survive the long game. The eighth test is ambition tolerance, and this is where most relationships quietly die. As your standards rise, your tolerance for stagnation disappears. Those who benefited from your smaller self begin to resist your expansion. They accuse you of changing. They frame your growth as coldness. What they are mourning is not the relationship. They are mourning access to a version of you they could predict and control. Machiavelli warned that those who fear your ascent will attempt to anchor you emotionally. The one meant for you does the opposite. They provoke your ambition. They see wasted potential as tragedy. They push you toward rooms you feel unqualified to enter. Your growth does not threaten them because they are building alongside you, not beneath you. They are not spectators, they are participants. They challenge your thinking, they raise the bar. They are impatient with your excuses because they see what you could be. This friction is often mistaken for incompatibility. In truth, it is alignment at a higher altitude. Comfort seeks sameness. Growth demands pressure. At this stage, something uncomfortable becomes undeniable. Most people were never meant to survive all of these tests. Not because they are malicious, but because they are incompatible. You were not too much. You were simply moving toward consequence, while they were still optimizing for comfort. Machiavelli never believed in universal companionship. He believed in rare alliances forged through shared endurance. The loneliness you associate with progress is often separation completing itself. This is where many men sabotage themselves. They grieve what was never structurally sound. They chase replacements. They dilute standards to escape silence. Machiavelli would call this surrender. Solitude is not punishment. It is refinement. It is the interval between false alliances and real ones. It is the space where you become legible only to those operating at your level.
At a certain point in a man's life,
the tests stop feeling external and begin to feel automatic. You are no longer consciously evaluating people. You are not sitting back, analyzing behavior, or waiting for signs. Instead, your life itself becomes the test. Your pace, your standards, your silence, your refusal to over-explain begin doing the filtering for you. Machiavelli understood that true power does not interrogate, it moves. And movement exposes incompatibility faster than confrontation ever could. This is the phase where many people misunderstand what is happening. They think they are becoming antisocial. They think they are losing empathy. They think something is wrong with them because fewer people seem able to stay close. In reality, they have crossed a threshold. When your internal order strengthens, disorder can no longer coexist near you without friction. Chaos feels exposed in your presence. Weakness feels uncomfortable. Indecision feels loud. So people drift, not dramatically, quietly, instinctively. Selection accelerates. What Machiavelli grasped, and what most men resist, is that you cannot carry others through your evolution without slowing it. Every time you drag someone forward who is not ready, you pay for it in momentum, clarity, and self-respect. The wrong people do not fail loudly. They fail through drag, through hesitation, through emotional taxation, through subtle resistance. They need reassurance where you need movement. They need stability where you need expansion. And the unalignment becomes impossible to ignore. This is also the stage where guilt tries to reassert control. You will feel it creeping in, whispering that you are abandoning people, that you owe them access, that your growth is selfish. Machiavelli would call this moral manipulation. Guilt is one of the most effective tools the weak use to restrain the strong. If someone requires you to remain smaller so they can feel safe, they are not your ally. They are anchoring you. The ones meant for you do not guilt you for rising. They adjust their footing. Another inevitability emerges here. You stop being understood by many, but you are no longer misinterpreted by the right ones. The people meant for you do not require explanation because they recognize structure. They recognize discipline. They recognize restraint. You no longer need to justify your pace or your priorities. Those who operate at your frequency see it immediately. There is no interview process, no proving phase, just recognition. Machiavelli believed that men of similar nature find one another without ceremony because they are responding to the same internal compass. This is where false intimacy becomes impossible. You can no longer pretend depth with shallow people. You can no longer maintain closeness through shared distraction or nostalgia. Conversations feel thinner, complaints feel repetitive, excuses feel unbearable. This is not arrogance, it is clarity. Your nervous system has recalibrated. It no longer finds stimulation in noise. It seeks precision. And precision repels those who live in emotional fog. The danger here is isolation without structure. Machiavelli warned that solitude without purpose rots into bitterness. The goal is not to reject people. The goal is to become so ordered internally that only compatible forces remain nearby. Solitude is not the destination. It is the forge. It is where impulse is burned off, where discipline replaces craving, where self-respect becomes automatic rather than performative. Men who fail this stage mistake solitude for identity and harden into resentment. Men who succeed use it to sharpen themselves into something unmistakable. At this point, something subtle but powerful begins to happen. You stop chasing alignment, and alignment starts finding you. Not in crowds, not through effort, but through work, through discipline, through consistency. You encounter people in motion, not in comfort. Builders recognize builders. Strategists recognize strategists. Those meant for you do not arrive asking for access. They arrive offering contribution. They do not admire your strength, they match it. Machiavelli understood that the rarest alliances are formed not through attraction, but through shared burden. When someone recognizes that your weight does not crush them, and you recognize the same in them, something locks into place. There is no urgency, no clinging, no emotional bargaining, just quiet, mutual respect. These are not relationships that consume energy, they compound it. This is also where you must turn the mirror inward, because the most brutal truth Machiavelli would force you to confront is this: if someone meant for you does not appear, it may be because you are not yet survivable yourself. High-caliber people do not orbit chaos. They do not linger around emotional volatility. They do not anchor themselves to unresolved men. They are selective not out of arrogance, but out of necessity. Their lives cannot afford friction. You do not attract what you desire. You attract what you are structured to sustain. If you want allies who can survive your depth, your ambition, your silence, and your intensity, you must become someone who can survive theirs. This means mastering your reactions. This means eliminating needless drama. This means becoming predictable in values and unpredictable in execution. Machiavelli believed that consistency in principle is what allows flexibility in action. This is where most people fail quietly. They want powerful connections without becoming powerful themselves. They want loyalty without discipline, respect without boundaries, depth without responsibility. The tests do not care about your intentions. They only respond to structure, and structure cannot be faked for long.
Once the right people appear, the work is not finished. In many ways, it is only begun. Finding alignment is rare, but sustaining it is rarer still. Most men destroy their strongest alliances not through betrayal, but through negligence, ego, or complacency. Machiavelli understood that power is never static. It must be maintained, reinforced, and protected from entropy. The same law applies to human alliances. Nothing strong survives on autopilot. The first rule of securing an alliance is becoming irreplaceable, not through dependency, but through unique value. Machiavelli wrote that men love according to their own advantage and fear according to the advantage of others. Translated into human connection, this means you cannot rely on affection alone. Affection fluctuates, emotion fades. What endures is utility fused with respect. You must occupy a role in someone's life that cannot be outsourced without cost. Not money, not gifts, but clarity, stability, insight, direction. Are you the person who sees patterns they miss? Are you the one who steadies them when chaos hits? Are you the one who challenges them without threatening their dignity? These roles create gravity. They do not trap, they bind through recognition. The second rule is the creation of a shared mission. Two people staring at each other eventually stagnate. Two people facing the same horizon can walk together for decades. Machiavelli never trusted bonds without purpose. He saw that alliances anchored only in pleasure dissolve under strain. A shared mission creates context. It transforms disagreement into refinement rather than rupture. Whether it is building a family, a business, a philosophy, or a way of life, there must be a third entity greater than both individuals. When conflict arises, it is no longer personal, it is logistical. This is how bonds survive stress without becoming toxic. The third rule is maintaining the edge. This is where modern minds recoil, but Machiavelli would insist on it. A relationship without the possibility of loss decays into entitlement. Not cruelty, not fear, but the quiet knowledge that respect must be renewed. You must continue to evolve, continue to sharpen, continue to move. When someone knows you are growing, that you have options, that you are not stagnant, respect remains alive. Desire remains alert. Loyalty remains conscious. The goal is not to threaten abandonment, but to remain a man who cannot be taken for granted. Yet Machiavelli would also warn you of the final and most dangerous threat,
your own ego. When alignment appears, ego rushes in to claim ownership. It tells you that you are the prize, that the work is done, that effort is no longer required. This is how alliances rot from the inside. The strongest bonds are guarded with humility, not submission, but awareness. You must continue to listen, continue to calibrate, continue to earn respect rather than assume it. Power that becomes lazy invites collapse. At this stage, a mirror must be held to your own life. If the person meant for you walked into your world today, would they recognize you as an equal? Or would they see instability, reactivity, and unresolved chaos? Machiavelli believed that like attracts like, not through desire, but through structure. High-caliber people do not search loudly, they filter silently. They are repelled by neediness, inconsistency, and emotional noise. If you have not found them yet, it may not be because they do not exist. It may be because you are invisible to their standards. This is why the work always returns to the self. You must build the fortress within before anyone can stand beside it. You must master your emotions, your impulses, your time, and your direction. You must become someone who does not need constant validation, who does not chase attention, who does not beg for loyalty. When you do, something shifts. You stop scanning for signs, you stop proving your worth, and, paradoxically, that is when recognition begins. The final truth Machiavelli would leave you with is this: walking alone is possible, but it is cold. He himself spent his final years isolated, writing in exile, surrounded only by his thoughts. Solitude sharpens, but it does not multiply. To find another consciousness that can survive your pace, your depth, your ambition, and your silence is the greatest strategic advantage a man can possess. It turns survival into expansion, effort into leverage, life into something formidable. These people are rare. You may meet only one or two in an entire lifetime. If you encounter one, do not let pride poison the alliance. Do not let comfort dull it. Do not let laziness rot it. Guard it with discipline and respect, because outside that bond is a wilderness of actors, opportunists, and ghosts. And if you are alone right now, do not despair. Use the solitude, sharpen your mind, build your value. Become so structured, so grounded, so internally ordered that when the right person finally crosses your path, they recognize you instantly and think without words, there you are. If this has shifted how you see people, understand this is only the surface. What has been shared here is the public doctrine, the version safe enough to speak aloud. There are deeper mechanics of power, influence, and human psychology that cannot be discussed openly without dilution. Those conversations exist elsewhere for those who are ready. If you found value here, subscribe. And if you want the architecture behind the architecture, the keys behind the walls, you know where to go. Only the ones meant for you will survive these tests. Make sure you are one of them.